Alright, so welcome to this final tutorial on this little introductory series to Adobe Muse. So first of all, what I want to do is show you how to add a new layout, in particular the phone layout, and then also what I want to do is show you how to export your files so that then you can take those files and publish them to the web. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is open up Adobe Muse, and then what I want to do is basically add a phone layout to my existing project. So I'm going to go ahead and click on phone, and then it will automatically come up with a dialog box to say add a phone layout. And then what I want to do is basically drop down this menu right here because I want to copy from an existing layout. So I'm going to copy from the desktop layout, and what I'm going to copy across is basically the site plan. So that's the pages and the hierarchy and the structure of your website. I can also copy across the page attributes, so you can have metadata for your pages and so on and so forth, so I can copy all that across. And also what I can do is copy the browser fill. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to that, and it will actually generate a sitemap from the desktop version, but however it's also copied the background as well. So we have a background image on the home page, and for the rest of the pages we just have that nice grey putty colour. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a look at the site properties now, because you'll notice that when we actually added a phone layout, it didn't actually allow us to change the width or the minimum height and so on and so forth. So how do we change that? Well, open the file menu and go to site properties, and inside of there you'll be able to see that what we have is the ability to edit the desktop layout settings and also the phone layout settings. So we can change the page width, the minimum height, and so on and so forth. Now, something really important to note is in the desktop layout version we have this ability to align our content area in the center, whereas with our phone layout we can't do that. So what we need to do is make sure our design actually fits and works well within the constraints provided. So what I'm going to do is leave this for now as the defaults, and then we'll take a look at how to achieve that inside of Adobe Muse. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK to that, and then what I want to do is take a look at my home page real quick, because this image is fairly large and obviously it's going to take a lot longer on mobile devices with slower connections. So what I'm going to do is open up the home page, and I'm just going to change the browser fill, and I want to basically delete out the background image like so. You'll also notice now that when I have opened this page we now have this little square brackets right here, and that's because we have more than one layout now. We have the desktop layout and we also have the phone layout. So inside of the square brackets obviously it's telling me which layout relates to this page that I currently have open. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out and take a look at styling my main master page. Alright, so I'm going to open up the main master page for the phone layout. Then I'm going to go back out into my site plan, go to the desktop version and open up the main master for the desktop layout. And then what I want to do is start copying things across. So for example, I'm going to unlock my header and footer layer, and then I'm just going to copy out my footer from my main desktop master page to my phone master page, and I'm just going to scale this down. Now this is effectively your content area and also your page width. So when I actually drag this out, it will actually go to 100% of the browser's width, and I'm just going to push this all the way down. Then I'm going to grab my text object and do the same there, make sure it touches the sides of the page, and then I'm going to move this down like so, and then we'll use the align panel to align it to the selection in the vertical center. So now that I've done that, I'm going to drag that guide down, just put that there. So what I'm going to do is make sure these two objects are in the correct layer, which is obviously going to be in the footer like so, and then I'm going to lock the footer. Alright, so now what we want to do is actually take a look at utilizing the space that we have, because at the moment for the header what we need to do is put in a menu and perhaps a little bit of intro text and so forth and so on. And you don't really want to make your header huge. You want them to get to the content as quickly as possible. And on a mobile device that can be very difficult. But if we use some widgets to aid that process, we can actually utilize more space more efficiently. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take a look at my widgets library. Now for this example I only have 3 pages. So in all honesty, if this was an actual project, you would just simply stick a horizontal menu in, because really you don't need anything more than that. It's just a few simple buttons that they can click on, and you just style it accordingly, like so. Nice and easy. However, let's say my site has 10 pages. What do I do then? So what I need to do is simply get rid of that, and I need to utilize some more widgets. So if I drop down the panels widget section, I can basically select from an accordion or a tabbed panel. That allows me to utilize more space. So what I'm going to do is grab the accordion, drag it and drop it, and then what I can do is actually edit the contents of this accordion widget. So I don't really want all these extra panels that I have right here. I want to simply get rid of those. So what I'm going to do is click on the label of that panel, then you'll be able to see you get the content area of that panel. But if you select the label and hit backspace or delete on Windows, what it will do is get rid of that panel altogether. So what I want is just one panel, and that panel is going to contain my menu. So first of all, let's style this widget, which is really nice and easy to do. So first of all, I'm actually selecting on the accordion itself, and I want to set the stroke to none. And the accordion is stretchable. So if I was to push the accordion all the way over to the left edge and all the way over to the right edge, the accordion would stretch accordingly. Now there is a problem with this, but I'll show you later on. So the next thing I want to do is I want to style this label area right here. So if I just click on the label area, you'll be able to see now I'm selecting that area, and what I want to do is get rid of the stroke, and then I want to change the fill to this nice brown color, and then I want to change the text. So what I'm going to do is select the text, align it to the center, italics, bold, change the font to Handley, and I'll change the font size to 24, and change the actual text itself to say menu. And what I'm going to do is select that and change the color to white. So the next thing to do is actually take a look at the different states that are available. So for example, I'm selecting on this label, and now you'll be able to see I can drop down this little menu right here, and that gives me all the states. So we have the normal state, so that's when people aren't selecting on it. Obviously I want to change that, so we'll change that background fill to be that nice light chocolate color. Then we can go to the rollover state, and we'll change that to a slightly darker brown, and then we'll go to the mouse down and we'll just make that slightly darker. And there we go. So now I've styled the label of this panel. What I can do is get rid of this text object, and then what I can do is place stuff inside of this panel, and I can grow and shrink the panel like so. So what I want to do is go ahead and grab my vertical menu and just drag it and drop it in there, and you'll be able to see you get that nice thick blue outline, which means you are actually dropping this into the panel. So that is the panel's content. And then what I want to do is move this into position. Simply drag it like so. You can select the content area, so it's really easy inside Adobe Muse. Just click it, move it around, and just have a good play with it. And you can always tell what you are selecting by looking right here in the menu bar. So that's looking pretty good. Perhaps maybe making this a little bit smaller because the menu's a bit big, and just shrinking this up a little bit. Then what I want to do is take a look at editing this text. So again, it's just like everything else, just double click until you go in and in and in all those nested objects, and then eventually you will be able to edit it. And I want to change the font to Arial, and I want to increase the font size because it's a bit small, and we'll leave it like so. Then what I want to do is just very quickly just change the background color. We'll make that again that nice chocolate color, and again you got your states in there, so you can easily change the states. So I could make that a slightly darker color, and so on and so forth. Also, when you have an accordion widget, if I was to drag and drop this in, you'll be able to see that one panel stays open at all times. So I have one panel there, but I've got one panel open up by default. In this case, I don't want that because my accordion only has one panel, and therefore what I need to do is actually say, basically, you can close all the panels. So I'm just going to tick that, and then once we've done that, what that allows me to do is actually click on that, and you'll be able to see now it will hide that content area. So let me go ahead and move this into position. Just make sure your header guide is right. There we go. And that's pretty much it really for your header. Alright, so first of all I want to show you a little problem with this style of menu, but please do bear in mind that this is amplified because we're on the desktop browser, not the actual device itself. So what I'm going to do is open up the file menu and say preview page in browser. And when I do that, you'll be able to see the accordion stretches 100% of the width. And when I open that up, you'll be able to see that so does the content area, but the content itself doesn't. So you're probably going, well, maybe if I make that navigation the width of the actual content area, then it should stretch 100%. So if I go ahead and open that up and simply select that navigation and stretch it to the width of the panel, just go ahead and preview that, you'll be able to see again it doesn't do that. So that's a little bug inside of Adobe Muse. However, it's not a big deal. As I said, it's majorly amplified in the desktop browser, but of course you should have a desktop version of your site. If you have a phone version, it's not really going to look that detrimental because, however, what you've got is a lot smaller screen and there'll only be a little bit more padding to the right side of the menu. Not that big a deal. So I'll just undo that and then I'll collapse that panel like so. So that's a bit unfortunate, but it's not a major deal. So the next thing I want to take a look at is the preview mode inside of Muse, because with the desktop version of the site, when I hit preview, it just gave me a basic browser window. But what about the phone layout? Well, I can go ahead and hit preview, and you'll be able to see right now that actually it's constrained the view to proportions of a particular device. So for example, I can change the preview size by changing the device that it's supposed to emulate the screen size of. So we have the iPhone 4, then you have the iPhone 5, and so on and so forth. And also what's really nice is the fact that you can change the orientation as well. So I can change this to landscape, and here it is in landscape. And if you want to scroll on the Mac, you've got the touchpad, so you can just use 2 fingers and scroll. And I'd imagine it'd be something similar on Windows, or you'd have a scroll bar in there somewhere. So it's looking pretty good, and it's worked out nicely. So now what I want to do is actually take a look at adding content onto my pages for the phone layout of my site. Alright, so what I'm going to do is open up the master page again, because we are going to have another problem with this accordion widget. However, I'm just going to leave it as is for now, but what I want to do is just make sure the header layer is locked. Otherwise, what it's going to do is going to put content in the header layer, and then it could potentially overlap our menu, so we don't want that. So now that I've done that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is quit out of that, open up the home page, and now what I want to do is drag in a basic slideshow widget. So I'm going to grab that and drop it in like so. And so what's going to happen here is we have a very basic widget that you can easily edit and customize. And you can use this like you would in a browser. So for example, you have your forward and back button. So if I press the forward button and just click on that, you'll be able to see I can go forwards and backwards through this little slideshow. So that's really nice and a great feature. Also, all these objects of this widget are easily customizable. You can move them around, you can have background images, you can do whatever you pretty much want to do with it. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and select the hero image, which is basically the large preview of the image, and I'm just going to scale that down so that it fits to the constraints of my design, which is 380. Let me just make sure we've got that right. There we go. 380, and then put this in like so. Now I don't want this forward and back buttons. We could have those in there, but I'm not interested in them, so I'm going to delete those out. We could have a description in there describing what each image is, but again, I'm just going to get rid of that. What I actually want is thumbnails. So what I'm going to do is click on the slideshow widget, and obviously when you click on a widget, you have that little blue button that gives you widget options. And so then what I can do is add images, but I'm not going to do that right now. Then I can also change the way the image fits in the hero. So for example, if it's to fit the content proportionally, so basically it will not allow any cropping of the image. It's got to fit within that area. Or you could say fill that area, and so there may be parts of the image that get cut off. And again, you can have the same for the thumbnail, whether it fits to the constraint of the thumbnail or whether it fills the area of the thumbnail. Obviously I haven't got thumbnails enabled here, but I will do in just a second. You can also choose the type of transition, so you can have fade, you can have it sliding horizontally or vertically. You can choose the transition speed. You can set it to autoplay, so as soon as the page is loaded, it's going to start playing this little slideshow. Then you can define the delay between the transitions. So at the moment that's going to be 3.5 seconds, and then it's going to take 0.5 of a second to actually do the transition. You can also shuffle this around so it selects images randomly that are in your slideshow. Then you can also tick lightbox, so when you click on that, it'll actually open up a nice little lightbox with the full image. And then also what you have is enable swipe. This is for touch enabled devices, so when they swipe from left to right, it will go to the previous image, and when they swipe from right to left, what will happen is it will show the next image. And down here you have all the little parts to the slideshow. So I deleted the previous and next buttons, but I can easily add those back in. You've got first, you've got last image, you've got captions. Again, I deleted those out, but it's just so easy to edit. And then you have the counter. Again, I deleted that out. Close button. Also, then you have the thumbnails. So if I tick that, you'll be able to see now that we've got a nice little view of our thumbnails, but they're in the wrong position. So what I want to do is click on that part of the widget, and I want to drag it and move it into position. I want to scale it so its width goes all the way across and budge this up. Then I want to move the thumbnails down. And then what I want to do is actually change the thumbnail size. So if I click on the thumbnail itself, you'll be able to see I can go to that image. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just scale that up like so until we go right to the edge, and there we go. So now what I want to do is actually place my images inside of this slideshow. So how do we do that? Well, click on the widget, open up the options to the widget, and then what we can do is say add images by clicking that folder icon, or what you could do is go to File, Place. I'm going to go in my assets directory, going to go to the gallery directory, and I'm going to select my slides. And then what I'm going to do is open this up, and you'll be able to see it's loading 3 files. I get a nice little preview of the first image, but then in the top right hand corner you'll be able to see that there's a little 3 right there telling me there's going to be 3 images. And if I actually place this on the hero image right here and just click, you'll see it's added those images to my slideshow, which is really nice. So what I want to do is get rid of all those stock images. So if I just click on the thumbnail and hit delete or backspace, it'll get rid of that. Or I could select on the thumbnail, click the hero image, and again hit backspace or delete, and there it goes. It just deletes it out for me. So that's a really nice feature of Adobe Muse. If you want to edit something, just click on it, change the size and so forth, and it's just so easy to work with. And then you can just click through and take a look at this. And then if you want to, you can add in different parts to this. So for example, you have the captions. So if I have the captions right here, and let's just change the font color so you can see this and the size. I could say picture 1. In fact, this one isn't picture 1, this one is picture 3. Then I can go to this picture right here. I can say this is picture 2, and so on and so forth. So it's really nice and easy to just create your own custom gallery. But however, what I'm going to do is select that and take the captions off. So have a play around with it, move all the parts of the widget around, and do that for a lot of the widgets because they're all very flexible in the way that they actually work. So the next thing that I want to do is add in a nice little animation. So I'm going to hit File, Place, and I'm going to place my homeanim.oam file. So I'm going to hit Open on that, and I'm just going to place that into the page and just position that up. So this is looking pretty good. And so what I want to do now is go ahead and preview that and take a look at how this will actually be viewed on a smartphone device. So you'll be able to see here we have a problem. The slideshow is playing nicely, we've got our nice little animation down here, everything's looking really good, apart from we have this gap. Alright, so what I want to do is go ahead and go back into Plan, and then I want to take a look at my actual master page. And what I'm going to do is unlock my header, select the Accordion widget, and then I want to take a look at the spacing panel. And then I don't want to just select the accordion, I want to select the label of that panel. And you'll be able to see now that when I've selected that label, what it's done is it's showing me that there is a padding of 10 pixels to the left. So I'm going to set that to 0. Now that's on the active state. Let's take a look at the normal state and make sure it's not on there, and it is. So on the normal state we also want to change that to 0. And then you might want to go through a few other states just to make sure that there is no padding to the left. Once you've done that, close it up, lock the header, exit out, and then let's preview it again, and you'll be able to see now everything is staying in line so that we don't have that big ugly 10 pixel padding to the right of our content. So it's fairly simple, it's a really nice looking site. So what we can do now is then move on and take a look at adding content to our About page. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up the About page, and what I want to do is again open up the desktop version of that page, and then I want to start copying a few assets out. So for example, we've got this PSD and this little bit of text, so we'll copy all of that and just paste that in. What we'll do is drag this image, drop it in here, and I want to scale that image down and move that into position. And then I'm going to bring in my text object. Now again, I could make this stretch 100% of the width, but however the text doesn't look very natural when it's all the way over to the left and all the way over to the right. So a quick tip, grab your text tool, open up the text options that you have available to you, and then what you can do is actually add a margin to the left, and you can also do that to the right as well. Might want to increase that a little bit. So you could do that, however I'm just going to make sure my design fits these constraints nicely, which it does, but I don't really want to do that. I just want to keep things nice and simple for now, and we'll just scale this in a little bit, and we'll draw out a guide, and we'll set the X value to 20, and we'll set this value over here, which is 380, and then you take away 20. So there we go. Then I just want to move this into position. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is take a look at grabbing the actual videos that we have. And I'm going to copy that section, paste it across, and then just moving this downwards. Alright. I'm going to push that in. And I'm going to edit the HTML, and I'm just going to set the width to 318. You might want to take off some of the height, otherwise you get those black bars on there, which doesn't really matter, but I'll set that to 220, something like that. And just let that update, and then we can just space this accordingly, like so. And again, I'm not really being very precise with this, but obviously you would use a lot more of your guides, drag your guides out from the top ruler and so forth, and do all the correct positioning vertically. So there we go. Then what I want to do is copy across this video and a bit of text and paste that in. Drag it down, edit the HTML, set that to 380. And there we go. And drag that down below. Push this content in. And there we go, and you might want to add a bit of spacing on the bottom there. So we just have something very, very basic. And again, you can quickly preview that right inside of Adobe Muse. Here is the team that we have. This is obviously a little bit unexpected results, but again, what we'll do is have to preview that in the browser and see how that looks. And also, our YouTube video is not quite looking the way we want it to. So let's go back into design mode, hit file, preview page in browser, shrink this down to the right size, and there you go. You can see that it looks okay actually in Safari, but not in the preview mode of Adobe Muse. So there are a few problems obviously with the preview mode in the way that it's rendering those videos, but overall it's done a good job in exporting that. So the next thing we want to do is actually take a look at the Contact Us page. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Close out the About page. I'm going to open up the Contact page, which is the desktop version, and then I'm going to open up the Contact page of the phone version, and then we need to copy some stuff out. So I'm going to copy Google Maps first of all. I'm going to say edit HTML. The width needs to be 380. And then what we can do is just click on that so it updates. Shrink this in. Put this into position. And there we go. So we have now Google Maps. And then I'm going to paste this image in and actually take a look at scaling this up a little bit. And I want to actually put this underneath, so I'm going to go to the layers, drop that below my HTML item, and then now you'll be able to see it's going underneath. I can sort of scale this up like so, and just change the actual position. And so there we go. And again, it's got that hyperlink on there. But however, it's going to now go to the home, and then in that brackets, it's telling us that it's going to the desktop version of the home page. So I want this to go to the home page of the phone layout rather than the desktop layout. So I'll just change that real quick. Then what I want to do is take a look at grabbing some of this content that we have right here, copying that out, pasting it in, just dragging that down below. And using your guides, you can easily position stuff up. So I want that X to be 20. Then I want another guide out here. So I'm going to make that 360. And then what I'm going to do is scale the text object so that it fits nicely within the guides. And drop that down a little bit so we get a bit of space in. And there we go, that is looking pretty cool. If you want to resize these that we have, and then I can select this form field, scale it in, and you'll be able to see it scales the other one in as well. And then I can select my text area and scale that in, and then I can just very quickly move my submit button in. Alright, so now that I've done that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually save that, and then obviously we can now preview this in the browser, because what I want to do is actually export the files to HTML, CSS and JavaScript and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do is close out those pages, and I'm going to save the Muse site. So say save site, and then drop down the file menu again and hit export as HTML. Now you could upload to the FTP host, and all you have to do is get your hosting details and actually upload that straight to your web server. So I'm going to say export as HTML. I'm going to choose a domain name, so I'm just going to say envato.com and click OK. And also I get to choose the location in which my file is going to get exported. So that's just going to be Adobe Muse. And then I'm going to create a new folder that says exported. Hit create, and I'm going to select that folder, hit open, and there you go. So once I've done that, I'm going to click OK. It's going to export my files out with all the different layouts and versions and so forth. I'm just going to click OK to that. Then I'm going to open up my project, which is down here, and you'll be able to see we have this exported folder which I created, and then inside of there you've got all of your images that it's exported out, CSS, and so forth and so on. So what I'm going to do is take a look obviously at this index.html file. That is the desktop homepage. So if I go ahead and say open with, and we'll open it with Safari, and there we go. So you can see that we have a page right now. Now there is a little bit of a problem. When I go to the About page, you'll be able to see that our PSD, which has now been converted into a JPEG, shows up. We've got our text. It's all looking good. However, what we have is our YouTube video missing. So you're probably going, well, was that a problem with Muse exporting the file, or was it something else? Well, it turns out that it is in fact YouTube itself. YouTube doesn't like you playing videos from a page that is on your local hard drive. So here I'm running this About page off my local hard drive, and therefore it's not in a server-based environment. So what I actually need to do is emulate the server environment. But however, you could just upload it to the web and your YouTube video will show, because you are then in a server-based environment. So first of all, I've got to make sure that Apache Server is running. This program is called XAMPP. It's free for Mac, Windows, and even Linux as well, and it allows you to emulate the Apache Server, so the Apache environment. And then we have MySQL as well, but that's not a big deal. So anyway, I'm going to close that out right now. And then what I want to do is I want to basically take my about.html file and I want to drag it and drop it into this file, which is in my xampp directory in my htdocs directory. So when I do that, I can simply drag and drop. I'm not going to take any of the images and CSS. And what I'm going to do is just drag that, drop it into the browser, and there you can see it opens up. Obviously we don't have any styling on here and the images are missing and so forth. But if I scroll down, you'll be able to see it's still missing, and that's because, again, we're pointing to this file as if it was local on our hard drive. We need to go through the local host, and then now it's emulating the Apache environment or a server-based environment. And as you can see now, it is showing the YouTube video. So that is something to bear in mind when you are embedding YouTube video. It's not really a big deal, to be honest with you, because if you put it on the web, it will show up, no questions asked. So that's just basically a little gotcha right there, but it's not a bug inside of Adobe Muse or anything like that. And also, if you actually preview this inside of Adobe Muse, you'll be able to see that that is in fact emulating a server-based environment. And even if you preview this in the browser from Adobe Muse, again, it's basically emulating a web server. So now finally, I just want to come on to my final thoughts about Adobe Muse. Now, Adobe Muse, number one, is a very good tool. It's a good tool because it allows us to be more productive as web designers. Now, as a developer, from this standpoint, it's not such a great tool, and many people have already pointed that out in the comments on the first tutorial of this little series that we have, and I have to agree. It becomes very unmaintainable when, if I was to inspect this right now, so if I inspect this element, you'll be able to see here that they've all got sort of different IDs and so forth that are very, very generic, so there's nothing really special about them. So obviously I have, you know, the inspect tool, so that helps me sort of basically see what's on my page and see how stuff is laid out and the corresponding CSS. But it does make for unmanageable code when you actually look at it, because you can't really figure out what U435-4 really is. So it can be very, very confusing, and you could easily get it mixed up with another element, change a bit of the CSS, and it causes a problem. What I'd like to see from Adobe Muse is basically where the layers palette, which allows us to look at all the objects within those layers, what we can actually do is rename those objects, and that will export out the ID or possibly the class, like we could do with something like Adobe Fireworks. And Adobe Fireworks actually did produce a lot cleaner code than Adobe Muse did. So for example, we have this div right here. Now, it's okay to manipulate objects using JavaScript and using the style attribute, because that's how you normally manipulate things with JavaScript and changing, you know, the alpha transparency and all sorts of things. And you do it through the style attribute, but the style attribute is pretty much obsolete. You shouldn't use it. But however, the JavaScript this time is generating code, which is absolutely fine for the style attribute. However, it's generating stuff like the width, whereas this width should be set 100% in the CSS itself. It should not actually be requiring us to actually use JavaScript to resize this div to make sure that it's the size of the browser's width. That doesn't make sense. You should just have the CSS point to that object and say the width is 100%. So there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to see implemented, but however, all of that stuff can be fixed easily. If they just go in, fine-tune that code, it should be producing some pretty good, manageable code. And web designers have longed for a tool that really does provide the silver bullet, and it just doesn't do that. Obviously, it doesn't work with any content management systems, but one of the main disappointing things is that if you were to give this code to a developer, he would simply say, well, you know, obviously I could put that into a CMS, but I wouldn't really want to, because it's a big mess, really, to be honest with you. There's a lot of styling done with JavaScript which should be done in the CSS, and there's a lot of other things. But as a tool itself, it is a very good tool, and I recommend people experiment with it, learn about it, and hopefully Adobe will get the export process cleaned up. Hopefully we'll be able to name our objects, so that way we can basically use IDs and classes, so that we don't have to sort of try to figure out how this thing is going to export the code. And yes, this is for designers. This tool is mainly for designers. However, it would be nice to see those features integrated and cleaner code produced so that developers could use this and be a little bit more happier. Also, I think they should provide a responsive design for the mobile and tablet version and so forth, because there is another tool out there and it's called Adobe Edge Reflow, and that does allow you to quickly design up a website that actually uses the 12-grid fluid system inside of CSS, and that allows you to obviously create a fluid design rather than a fixed design. But however, there are benefits to doing it this way as well, because you're creating a design that's customized to a set size, and also what it can do is, you know, obviously save a lot of time, because we are creating a site just for that particular device, so it's got no extra CSS or any CSS media queries in there. But with today's connections, even on mobile devices such as 3G and now rolling out is 4G, you know, data connections are just getting absolutely massive, and in fact rivaling broadband. So it really is a great time to be a web developer. Obviously, this is a great tool to sort of get you on your way. Would I use it for client work? No, not at the moment. But I mean, if it produced cleaner code, if it produced more fuller code that I could then take and integrate into a content management system, absolutely, because it's going to save me time. So it's a great tool. It will grow. It's in its infancy at the moment, and I hope that Adobe are always going to keep updating it and making it better, because this one seems like, you know, they've been really focusing on this Adobe Muse thing because they're taking a whole new angle on it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just very quickly though, when we actually submit this, let's say to Theme Forest or any other marketplace, what you need to do is make sure that, if I was to go back out here, include the Muse project, but also include the exported files, and don't forget Adobe Muse is a lot like Adobe InDesign where it links to files, so keep everything nice and neat and keep all the assets in the assets directory, so then you're not having to grab all these different things from the hard drive and move stuff around. So keep everything nice and neat, and always include that HTML exportation, because the user may purchase that theme and say, wow, I really like that. However, they don't have Adobe Muse, and it will happen because people don't read the descriptions and so forth, so make sure you provide that exported version for them. But apart from that, that should be a-okay. So, thank you for watching this lesson, and there will be an up-and-coming course on Tuts Plus. So there'll be a large course about all of the feature sets of Adobe Muse. As I said, we've just brushed the surface here. We've got parallax scrolling, we've got all kinds of different things that we can take a look at. So this is just like a rudimentary introduction to that course, and then in the next course we'll be building, you know, a website that's fully functional, that's got all the bells and whistles on it. So that's in the upcoming Tuts Plus course. So, thanks for watching.